quick word on this week's sponsor, Ground News. War often brings out the most heated and polarising perspectives, and the news we read and the news we miss heavily influences our outlook on these types of issues, which is why I'm happy to be partnering with Ground News again for this video. They're an app and website that gathers related news articles from around the world and political spectrum in one place. They give you the context about each source's political leanings, their factual reliability, and their ownership to better understand the full picture. For example, let's take a look at this story, covering US President Trump proposing that the US will take over Gaza and relocate Palestinians. Ground News found 718 news sources from across the world and political spectrum. The Washington Post, identified by Ground News as left-leaning, led with an article stating that the proposal is rejected by allies and adversaries alike. The Daily Wire, identified by Ground News as right-leaning, focused on Israeli President Benjamin Netanyahu's support for President Trump. Having the news with full context is invaluable to plainly see how the origin of a source can heavily dictate the narrative. Ground News even has a dedicated blind spot feed to highlight stories that are disproportionately covered by either side of the political spectrum, letting you sidestep echo chambers from like-minded outlets. I encourage you to check it out at ground.news/TOR to make sure you're getting all sides of every story. They're giving my viewers 40% off their Vantage subscription, the same plan I use for unlimited access. I think Ground News is doing important work, and I hope you'll check them out. The Sikorsky S-64 Skycrane helicopter, flanked by two UH-1 Hueys, approaches the mysterious object. Echo 1, this is Welcome Wagon, initiating communication sequence. The pilot of the Skycrane, call sign Pious Shadow, switches on the sophisticated light array that has been retrofitted to his helicopter. These massive disc-shaped craft have been spotted all around the world. They have approached the Earth from space, slowed down, entered the Earth's atmosphere, and have deployed into a hover over the centres of major cities across the globe. With the apparent inability to communicate with the craft, in Washington DC, a helicopter has been fitted with a light array to try to establish some kind of first contact. However, suddenly a flurry of panicked radio communications are transmitted to the helicopters. Warning, imminent danger, return to base immediately. But it's too late. With a flash of light, Welcome Wagon and her escorting Hueys are vaporized and plummet to the ground in flames. These visitors are hostile. While the US Vice President and Joint Chiefs have already been evacuated to a secure location, the President has remained in the White House to calm the people. The President is now evacuated and flown by helicopter to Andrews Air Force Base, where the presidential Boeing 747 is ready to take off. The enemy craft has shown hostile intent and now floats silently over the White House. The pilots are ordered to take off quickly. The President, his daughter, and his entourage are in immediate danger. As Air Force One's engines spool up to a scream to take flight as quickly as possible, the ground begins to shake and a deafening roar is audible over the aircraft's engines. The date is the 2nd of July 1996. Washington DC and the rest of the world is under attack. From the air on the 3rd of July, the President orders US forces to launch an immediate counterattack. A similar fate has befallen Los Angeles. Another enemy ship has manoeuvred over the downtown area and unleashed its deadly city-destroying weapon. The city lays in ruin. The first wave of the counterattack against this craft will be the FA-18 Hornet strike aircraft of US Marine Corps VMFA 314 Marine Fighter Attack Squadron, known as the Black Knights. After a briefing and a short blessing by the squadron reverend, the strike aircraft begin taking off from Marine Corps Air Station El Toro, southeast of the city. While their base at the time is Marine Corps Air Station Miramar, these Top Gun pilots have been temporarily deployed to El Toro. The Black Knights will attack the enemy craft from the southeast, and will be joined by other squadrons who will attack from the southwest and northwest. Because satellite communications have been knocked out by the attackers, the exact target location will be confirmed from the ground while the aircraft are en route. As the Marine jets fly out towards the target, the President moves into the operations room aboard Air Force One to monitor the progress of the attack. He has just learned that the helicopter that had evacuated the First Lady from Los Angeles never made it to Nellis Air Force Base. He fears the worst for his wife, but must remain focused on the mission underway. The FA-18 Hornets are going to attempt to use their guided weapons to counterattack and destroy one of the massive enemy ships, which measure several kilometers across. For this purpose, They are carrying a surprising loadout of short-range Sidewinder heat-seeking air-to-air missiles and AMRAAM medium-range radar-guided air-to-air missiles. Intriguingly, the AMRAAMs on this mission have been physically disguised as Harpoon anti-ship missiles. The 20kg warhead on the AMRAAM seems to be a misguided choice to attack such a large ship, compared to the 221kg warhead of the Harpoon the Hornets could have carried instead. In the end, the weapon's loadout will make little difference. The Black Knights emerge from the clouds, and their pilots are shocked by what they see before them. Los Angeles has been completely destroyed and lays ablaze. Before them, an enormous black disk hovers above the remains of the city. The Black Knight Squadron Commander, Captain Stephen Hiller, worries for the safety of his own partner in the city below, but knows that this is his chance for revenge. He is ready to give a slap to those who did this. The Black Knights lock on to the massive ship with their AMRAAMs, and permission is granted by the President to engage. Hiller radios out, "Knights, this is Night 1. We are red and free. Fox 3. With that, the Black Knights ripple off their first salvo of AMRAAMs against the enemy. The missiles get a good lock on the target and streak over the skies of Los Angeles towards the ominous object. The Knights continue to advance as the missiles fly ahead. However, at 107 meters away from the target, all of the AMRAAMs simultaneously explode in mid-air. None hit the ship. With little time to assess why this might be, Captain Hiller radios his squadron again. This is Night 1, switching to Sidewinders, moving in. With this, he pulls hard to the left to initiate what is known as a defensive notch maneuver, to shake detection by any potential enemy radar. His squadron follows close behind. Meanwhile, the missile attack has alerted enemy air forces to their presence. The Black Knights will soon have a big problem. Hiller calls the squadron into a turn back towards the enemy in a newly formed battle line abreast. He sweep locks the enemy ship, gets a good lock tone with one of his Sidewinder missiles, and announces Fox 2. The Black Knights fire off a volley of Sidewinders and continue to follow them in towards the enemy. However, again the Sidewinders are destroyed 107 meters out from the ship, and this time the air itself seems to visibly ripple from the explosions. Spotting the rippling phenomenon, Captain Hiller calls his squadron again. They must have some kind of protective shield over that hull. Knights, pull up, pull up. Desperately trying to avoid flying into the shield itself, the Hornet pilots pull as hard as they can in a high G maneuver, directly upwards. Knight 3 attempts the pull-up, but his controls are showing a complete failure in the stats. His aircraft crashes into the shield and explodes in a large fireball. Black Knight Squadron lights their afterburners and continues to climb vertically up the side of the enemy ship. This is the moment when, to their horror, the pilots spot hundreds of enemy fighter aircraft swarm out from a port in the ship right in front of them, like warrior ants swarming from the nest to defend the colony. There is no time to avoid the swarm of fighters. Captain Hiller calls out, "Blow through them," and Black Knight Squadron screams through the mass. A direct collision is sustained and another Hornet is lost. This is just the beginning. A large and confusing dogfight ensues in the skies above LA. The enemy fighters are faster and more maneuverable than the FA-18s, and the scrap is one-sided. The enemy has developed advanced directed energy weapons, which their fighters use to devastating effect. With technological and numerical superiority, the Black Knights are systematically blown out of the sky. Knight 1 is being trailed by one enemy fighter, but is being supported by his wingman, Knight 2. Knight 2 rolls in behind the fighter and launches a Sidewinder missile, which tracks and detonates. However, the enemy fighters also carry the same protective shield technology as the mother ship. The weapons of the US Marine Corps fighters can do nothing, and the dogfight is a turkey shoot. The President watches on from Air Force One and demands that the squadrons be withdrawn immediately. But it's too late. Black Knight Squadron is being annihilated. Aircraft after aircraft are being blown out of the sky, and almost the entire squadron is lost alarmingly quickly. Knights 1 and 2 light their afterburners and dive to low level to try to escape. Using the ground as cover, they desperately perform evasive maneuvers to shake the attacking aircraft. Directed energy weapons flash around them as they brake for the rugged terrain and canyons of the desert. Two enemy fighters stick to their tails like glue, no matter what evasive maneuvers they try. Knight 2 begins to panic, and calls up on the radio, "He's on me like white on rice. I can't shake him." His panic overwhelms him, and he pulls a high G pull-up at too high a speed. The blood rushes from his brain to his feet, and he blacks out, losing complete control of his aircraft. One of the enemy fighters pursues him skywards, seemingly unaffected by the G-forces, and closes in to the Hornet, whose pilot is now incapacitated. Now that the American jet is no longer maneuvering, the kill is easy, and Captain Jimmy Wilder is shot down. Captain Hiller is the last knight still flying, and he dives into the rugged terrain. He pulls high G turn after high G turn through the mountains and canyons, green flashes screaming past his aircraft as he desperately tries to evade the attacker. Cockpit audio recordings from his aircraft's black box would later show that Captain Hiller was screaming taunts and abuse at the attacking aircraft during his impressive defensive maneuvers. However, such is the superiority of the enemy technology, it is only a matter of time before his luck runs out. Hiller's FA-18 sustains a direct hit from a directed energy weapon, and one of his engines flames out. Unable to perform the high G evasion with only one engine, Hiller knows he must now eject or be shot down. With the enemy fighter now trailing him close, he has an idea. He pulls the handle on his aircraft's drogue parachute, usually deployed when landing, which flies out of the Hornet's tail and expands, fully blocking the view of the trailing fighter. He ejects just before his Hornet and the now blinded enemy fighter both fly into the ground ahead of him. Captain Hiller has not only survived but scored a maneuver kill. He floats to the ground before making his way to the crash-landed craft to claim his prisoner. While the dogfight was ongoing, Marine Corps Air Station El Toro has been completely destroyed. He will have to find his way to another nearby base. It isn't on any of the maps, but it is there. Meanwhile, in the UK, the invaders have landed on the ground in cylindrical vessels in the town of Woking, southwest of London. The crews of the vessels disembark and construct massive three-legged fighting machine tripods. These fighting machines stand up and walk across the land towards London. They use the same directed energy weapon technology as their fighter aircraft, each fighting machine armed with 2 heat rays, which they use to devastating effect on the civilians and military units below. More cylinders land across the south of England, and more tripod fighting machines emerge to join the advance on the City of London, killing everything in their path with their heat rays. Rumours spread of the strange invaders, and at first those who have seen them are dismissed as being mentally unstable. After all, no one would have believed that this world was being watched keenly and closely by intelligences greater than man's, and yet as mortal as our own, scrutinised and studied, perhaps almost as narrowly as a man with a microscope might scrutinise the transient creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. Yet, across the gulf of space, intellects vast and cool and unsympathetic regarded this earth with envious eyes, and slowly and surely drew their plans against us. These plans are in motion. British Army artillery units now deploy in a defensive line along the Thames at the village of Shepperton and await the invaders. The artillerymen open fire with their 12 and 15-inch guns on the 5 advancing fighting machines. Unlike the flying craft, the ground-based tripods landing in southern England are not protected by advanced shield technology. The guns of the Royal Artillery smash into the leading fighting machine, the artillerymen aiming for a small opening in the head of the machine, which they presume is where they are being controlled from. The machine stumbles and crashes to the ground. Cheers erupt at their success. 4 trucks brave the incoming fire to retrieve parts of the downed machine to be taken away for analysis. Perhaps a weakness can be found. The fighting machines are vulnerable and can be taken down with the correct application of firepower aimed at weak points. The cheering is short-lived. The remaining 4 fighting machines in the attack open up with their heat rays and fire rockets into the defensive position. These rockets explode, discharging a black smoke into the air amongst the position. The black smoke is a chemical weapon. The artillerymen breathe in the deadly gas and are immediately knocked out of the fight. All succumb to the smoke and suffer agonizing deaths. More fighting machines land and move into the capital city. They continue to discharge their black smoke and use their heat rays to destroy everything in their path. The evacuation of London is ordered too late, and many people are killed by the fighting machines, the smoke, and by a general breakdown in society during the stampede. People head north and east out of the city to escape. As the chaos continues, survivors spot a mysterious red weed beginning to grow in the areas that the invaders have secured. The red weed grows everywhere, consuming buildings and killing all vegetation that existed before. The fighting machines occupy London and for a while do not continue their advance, hoping that the occupation of the capital city will demoralise the people. Meanwhile, caravans of refugees head east for the Essex and Kent coasts, hoping to board boats to escape to mainland Europe. Sailors from across the UK, the Netherlands, France and Sweden have bravely sailed with haste to the Essex coast, from Harwich down to Shrewsbury, and deep into the Blackwater River, to rescue as many people as they can from certain death. Fishing boats, electric boats, Thames launches and pleasure yachts move people from the beaches and piers out to the larger vessels waiting in deeper water. Merchantmen, colliers, cattle ships, passenger ships, oilers, and even ocean liners from Southampton load the fleeing refugees hoping for deliverance. Royal Navy, unable to fight the tripods on land, have deployed 3 ironclad battleships in the Thames estuary to try to cover the Kent coast evacuations, but these are out of range of the evacuations in Essex. Their smoke is only just visible on the horizon. The dense swarm of civilian vessels is extremely vulnerable. Many tens of thousands of civilians are boarding the boats, impatient to set sail for the safety of the sea. Many fear leaving their beloved England, some beholden by the fear that a Frenchman and these invaders from a faraway world might be similar in many ways. The dense fleet finally begins to sail eastwards at around 5 PM. It is at this time when civilians aboard the boats hear the sound of distant guns in the direction of Foulness. Through the haze, little can be made out by the passengers on the boats, other than the faint shape of a plume of smoke rising. The battleships in the Thames estuary begin to make more smoke and bob in the water, perhaps turning to rush to the scene, but they are too far away. The fleeing civilians turn their desperate gaze back landward, as there, appearing out of the haze, advancing along the muddy coast, is a fighting machine. Another comes, and then another, striding over the hills and plunging far out into the water. The Titans advance towards the fleeing shipping. Another is spotted, and then yet another further inland. Panic quickly sets upon the crews. Across the dense fleet, ships belch smoke and steam, sails are extended, and the vessels of differing speeds jockey for position to overtake each other and escape. The fighting machines have the speed, range and firepower to quickly overcome the fleet and annihilate it, killing all. Passengers aboard 2 vessels are flung about as their captains manoeuvre to avoid collisions. However, as they pick themselves back up to their feet, the sound of cheering spreads like a wave among the watching civilians. Steaming forth from the crowd of vessels at flank speed in the direction of the fighting machines is an iron bulk like the blade of a plough tearing through the water. The small vessel sits low in the water, her twin funnels blasting smoke and sparks from her screaming engines, her twin forward guns ready to fire. The little warship charges bravely landwards, the hearts of her crew filled with their duty to hold off the fighting machines so that the civilian fleet behind them can escape. This is HMS Thunderchild. This charging warship is a torpedo ram, a small vessel designed to penetrate enemy harbours and sink vessels at anchor. She sits low in the water, exposing little to enemy fire. Her primary armament is her submerged torpedo tubes, but scoring direct hits against the legs of the fighting machines is unlikely. Her secondary armament is her bow ram, designed to smash through protective booms and nets that hinder entry into enemy harbours. Thunderchild spits fire and smoke from her funnels, and she continues her charge against the fighting machines. She does not fire her guns, but simply drives at full speed towards them. The fighting machines are so astonished by her that they also do not open fire. Had Thunderchild fired her guns, she would likely have been sent swiftly to the bottom. Her speed is deceiving as she cuts through the water towards them. Finally realizing the danger, one fighting machine launches a black smoke rocket at the marauding Thunderchild. It bounces off her port side, the chemical weapon exploding, but her speed carries her away from the poisonous gas cloud expanding behind her. Such is her aggression, the fighting machines begin to back away towards the land. Thunderchild screens in on the first fighting machine, attacking with her ram. The machine raises a heat ray against the warship, now almost upon it, and fires its torch of flame into Thunderchild's side. The weapon penetrates her hull, but she completes her attack. The ram of HMS Thunderchild smashes into the fighting machine. Its legs crumple and the invader crashes into the water. She has smashed the first enemy tripod to pieces, but her captain knows that the game is now up. Thunderchild opens up with her main guns on the second fighting machine, her shells pounding the enemy vehicle for all humanity. She turns her ram against the second machine and powers forward into another charge. The civilians watch on and shout incoherently from the fleeing ships. They sense that victory is nearing and that fortune must have smiled. People start cheering for the heroic Thunderchild. Their joy is short-lived. The second machine quickly raises its heat rays and melts Thunderchild's valiant heart. The flashing torch pierces the deck, smashing timbers and lashing ropes. A violent explosion erupts from her engines and funnels. Knowing that it is the end, the crew of the small but mighty warship continue their charge, her momentum carrying her forth. Thunderchild smashes into the second fighting machine, pulverizing it like cardboard. The collision is her final act. HMS Thunderchild detonates in a massive explosion of fire, smoke, and steam. The civilian fleet continues to sail for safety. Smoke and steam obscures the area of the engagement for several tense minutes, the people aching to learn of their fate. The murk eventually clears, revealing the Essex coast once more. All 5 of the fighting machines have disappeared, as has the valiant Thunderchild. With her sacrifice, she has destroyed at least 2 fighting machines in a thunderous ram attack, and caused the others to retreat. She has bought time for the battleships steaming from the Thames estuary to arrive. The civilian fleet will escape. However, the human race is losing this global war of worlds. With cities across the world being destroyed and occupied, dozens of cylinders begin to fall. More craft will emerge unhindered to bring death and destruction. For now at least, Earth belongs to the Martians. The technology of man has been overpowered, but the humble virus, both biological and synthetic, might be humanity's only hope of ever seeing its Independence Day.